Hello and welcome back to Rediscovering You. Today, I am thrilled to welcome to the show Carolina Velis. Carolina is a trained astrologer, ritual advocate, and dedicated student of timeless wisdoms, dedicated to harmonizing life with the rhythms of the natural world. With over a decade of immersion in the mystical arts, Carolina has honed her expertise in a variety of metaphysical practices, including astrology, planetary magic, ancestral healing, chaos magic, and plant medicine. She also dabbles in numerology and herbalism when her time allows. Carolina nurtures a vibrant Facebook group and her monthly membership, the Unveiled Path Circle, providing a sanctuary for those drawn to personal transformation through astrology and ancient ritual techniques. Carolina, welcome to the show. I am so happy to have you here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I hear you reading that. I was like, oh yeah, that is me. It was very much me.
Isn't
It's
it so
funny.
funny when we hear somebody else verbalizing all of the amazing things that you do? You're like, oh wait, yeah, wow, like I'm kind of awesome.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I forget, like, yeah, I have all these facets about me, and most people don't really get to see the full you. You're just it
hmm
takes time, and you don't get to like explore all the ins and outs. So thank you for reading that.
It was my honor, my honor. And I have to say, I'm so impressed with your amazing skill set that you've cultivated over the years and everything that you're able to draw from. So, for the listeners who might not know a lot of what these different skills that you have, what it actually means in practice, can you, in your own words, explain what it is that you love to do, how you are passionate about showing up and serving people in the world today?
Yeah. So I would describe myself as like archetypal way as a mystic. And I didn't really know that until much later in life. Like I didn't have that sense of feeling when I was a kid, except that I always felt that I was different. And my curiosity about things really leaned towards one way of in life. Like it was very plugged into what I call the muggle world, which is like if I can't see it in my physical realm, then I can't believe it.
Mm-hmm.
And so from a very young age, I explored psychedelics. So I've been in that realm of exploration, and more so much later in life as more as a therapeutic portion of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I do is with that curiosity about what is the unseen, what is the taboo, the things that we're not allowed to really like talk about because they're hidden. That's what
Mm-hmm.
taboo is in the occult, and those things are ancient wisdom and knowledge, which is our ancestors studied the movement of the stars and the planets.
Mm-hmm.
These are old texts. They're thousands of years old. And I didn't really give it that much credit until I allowed myself to explore that. And I went deep. I went now, once I went down there, I was like, wait a second, there's so many interesting resonances and connections between things across cultures and time. And then, I mean, I'm talking like, drawings on rocks or buildings or pictures or people or objects, they all have meaning. And I started learning that much later. Instead of, I feel like I should have learned that when I was young to
Mm-hmm.
understand, like, okay, that is how many things are formed today. Like, a perfect example is no one really digs deep, but, why do we have the symbols that we have on the dollar? You
Great
know?
point.
That,
Seriously.
yeah, like understand these things. These things have meaning, and if therefore it's an intention, and intention has energy behind it. And I believe that anything you put energy behind, you're creating.
Mm-hmm.
So I teach people astrology. I teach spiritual curious women the basics of astrology, of what does that mean But then how can you take what is called your birth chart, which is really just a blueprint of the locations of all the stars and the planets for when you were born, that
Hmm.
moment of taking a breath. And over time, the ancients have passed down this knowledge, and humans have added more nuance and more information to this breadth of work. And so there are techniques that are literally ancient, and we call
Hmm.
them ancient versus modern versus today. And there is, I try to walk the path of being informed by the past, but also being very curious of how like society now interprets these things and looks at them. So that's a very short nutshell. In the astrological realm, just because of my curiosity, it has also tapped into other things to understand, well, the correspondences to rocks and crystals, the correspondences to herbs, the
Hmm.
correspondence to the body. Like it is all tied and can be seen in the astrological chart. And that's what blows my mind. I was like, what? How did they figure this out? Like over time, they just sat there and just watched and observed because there was no TV, right? There was
Right.
no newspaper, there was no radio. It was the studies. That's what people did. They studied if that was their path. And so I'm just like in awe and so grateful that it's here because it's helped me a lot to understand and make sense of things.
Makes so much sense. And again, like your sense of curiosity, which is what inspired you from the beginning to just be curious about what's around you and noticing the synchronicities, noticing patterns, noticing things across time and across cultures. And you bring up such a valid point now too about how our ancestors didn't have the distractions that we have today with electronics and, everything. And they were able to truly be present with their surroundings, be present with the planet, be present in looking up at the stars and asking questions and mapping things together. And there's so much wisdom to be had that we are missing out on not tapping into what our ancestors have learned and discovered and
Mm-hmm.
we can use it in our daily
Right.
lives.
Yeah.
Did you
Mm-hmm.
have any personal experiences in your own development or your own journey that really inspired you to dig deeper into the work that you're doing?
Yeah, so this is where things are so fascinating, and it's kind of, I sometimes wonder if like, am I the chicken or the egg? Like, what's really happening here in this reality? Because I have my brain and my curiosity, like I'm willing to question everything. I don't necessarily think that just because you say it's one way, it's going to be that way. So, I used to work in the corporate world. I've since my early 20s, I went into what we call the internet. That was my work. That's all I ever did. And coming up with new ideas and new systems, and how does a business do business online? Like that was my world. And there was a big point, an awakening that happens at 42. And I didn't know at the time, but that time frame, 41, 40 to 42, is a big point of one of these midlife transits that happening. And it's a funny name because we're all kids, but it's called the Uranus opposition. And it's a point where one of the planet of awakening, of really tapping into our authenticity as an individual, returns to the place of where what an opposition to what your natal placement is of Uranus, because your chart is essentially just a clock after you're born. It's just like, oh, here comes another lesson. Well, it's another transit generally. It's just another thing coming back. But this is once in a lifetime, because the Uranus's transit or through the whole zodiac is only 84 years.
Mhm.
So 40 to 42, many people lose their minds, right? Men like get divorced. We all go through this divorce or awakening of like, I don't know if I'm happy with this job. I don't know if I'm happy living here. I'm not sure if I'm happy with myself.
Yes, everything you're saying is making so much sense. And I personally can relate to that very specifically with the numbers that you said of that age, the 41, 42, of there being like this major awakening. What was that for you? Talk about your experience at that age time, if you're comfortable.
Yeah. So at that time, I was working for Intel, and I was living the life of, earning a lot of money, living a really big presence, what I thought, but it was very soulless. I
Hmm.
wasn't happy, and no matter how much I was earning, I wasn't fulfilled. Spiritually, I felt like I was doing something wrong. I was physically ill, thinking about the possibility of staying on in that business. And I was also, it's all lines up astrologically. I was also feeling completely lost, like fog. I had no idea what I wanted to do.
Hmm.
None, absolutely none. But I just knew that if I continued, that it was going to be like the soul death, you know, so slow death of my soul. And so I took a jump. I left Intel, and because I was given an offer, they volunteered, constantly volunteer people to, if you want to leave with paid exits, and I did. And it was huge because people were like, don't leave. I'm like, I cannot not leave. I have to
Yeah.
leave, and I don't know what to do. And that began an absolute unravel of my entire life,
Mm-hmm.
an entire life. And it, within 2 years, I was divorced. Within like 5 years, I officially left all of that world of working for somebody else and took on the path of figuring out, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll do whatever to get
Hmm.
pay the bills, but find what I really want, which is this. What you're seeing now is me teaching others. And this journey, that was a big grief moment of like releasing a personality, a network of friends,
Hmm.
what some may call a place in society,
Hmm.
um, so many things. And then at that, all these, as this time progresses, of course, I decided that I wasn't gonna pretend that I wasn't aging. So I decided not to dye my hair anymore.
Hmm.
So I was like, how, like, it's obvious I'm aging. Hello. So
Not
I
fooling
I
anyone.
really, yeah, I really put up the flag. I'm like, I'm authentic now. And that journey spawned me to really dive deep into astrology and esoteric knowledge. And through that, I went back and I explored what had happened with my experience as being a mother for like 5 weeks in my early 30s. So with astrology, I had the ability to look back from a very, obviously, many years later, okay, like a
Mhm.
good 10 years later, maybe 15 years later, where I was able to remove myself emotionally enough and healed, where I
Mhm.
could look at it objectively, but also see what was happening astrologically to me. And I had this like huge integration process of recognizing like how there was nothing I could have done. Like there
Mhm.
was so much. So at 32 years old, again, it's in my chart. This is so
Mhm.
nutty. At 32 years old, I had a preeclampsia so severe. I landed in the ER and had an emergency C-section. And my child came in at 27 weeks gestation, and he was here for 5 weeks, and that was it. Poof. And my life went like, and when 42 was nothing. 32 was I became an adult. Like that's when, like, facing life and death like that at such an age and so personal and close. And,
Yeah.
it was like I didn't relate to anything or anyone around me anymore. I'm like, why would you want to hang out, watch football? Like, I'm
Yeah.
here. Like, it's just, you can't relate at all. So, it's been quite the journey of healing of from that point and to the 42, and then now I'm 52. Oh, actually no, I'm going to be turning 54. Lies.
crazy thing. Easy to lose track of time.
It is. It's so easy. And yeah, it is wild. I just had a memory come back about this time because I was just in Portland letting go of my home, of my belongings in my home. And I came across my late son's like hospital stuff. And oh my God, I was like, oh shit, this stuff is still here. Like, I need to really, really, really let it go. And our friend had told us that he felt a presence there still. And I was like, no way, I'd gotten rid of it all. And I hadn't.
Wow.
So I burned that, and there was definitely another final release of
Yeah.
energy. But it was, you just never, you never heal necessarily 100%. I don't think anybody could really say that about death of loved ones
Mm-hmm.
because regardless of the situation, whether it's a week, a day, 5 years, 50 years, like there's still a lot that goes with that. And for me, it's like there's the loss of a child, but there's also the trauma to the body,
Yeah.
and that we are just now really learning about, right? We're now just really catching up with the what we probably have already always known,
Mm-hmm.
that trauma gets stuck in the body.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you've experienced so much in your life that, grief is a natural response, a natural emotion to have to the things that you've had. And particularly, I want to highlight the loss of your child. I am so sorry that you've experienced that. And that is a loss that only a mother who has lost a child knows what that loss is like. Um, but you talk about grief so openly at this phase right now, and I'm curious, what role do you see as grief in playing in your evolution? And do you always look at it as necessarily something to avoid or something that's negative, or is there something to be gained from grief?
Yeah, I honestly I feel like we don't grieve enough in society. And grieving is not just the death of like a loved one. It's grieving of an identity, of a marriage,
Hmm.
of a pet.
Hmm.
Like now more of that is common than say something like a child because so many people have pets
Yeah.
and we
Yeah.
put so much energy into that pet relationship. So grieving, I'd say, is we're not doing enough, and it's
Hmm.
really required because there's no time frame. So some people will be like, the quicker you can get to it, the faster you can get to like healing. And the reality is like, well, that would be awesome. However, there's no timeline that people can say it will take. I'm sure there's people who've tried to like study it and they're like, yeah, if you're 3 months out, if you're 6 months out, if you're, I don't know about that. I just know that for me, like my first 10 years were not easy. They were really,
Yeah.
really hard. Like it would just be and I'm in a very emotional, empathic being. So all the emotion that I repressed,
Hmm.
once that I allowed that to come through, it would just come through.
Hmm.
And so when people ask me if I have a child, I'm like, I'll speak up. Like, I'm sorry that you're going to have to hear this other story that is not the happy one, but it's the reality. This is the
Yeah.
reality of life.
Yeah. And that's beautiful that you speak your story because it's also giving permission to other people to share the parts of themselves that aren't like this wonderful, rosy things. And that is life. Death in all of its forms are an inevitable piece of life, and it's something that unites us and connects us as humans. And so it makes so much sense to want to share that with others. And I struggle personally with why people choose or why people have difficulty with sharing those pieces of themselves and almost pretending like it didn't happen and that
Mm-hmm.
it just wasn't a part of your journey because it's really taking away from the totality of who you are as a person yourself and away from the potential of what you can create and cultivate in the relationship with the other person by virtue of being open and honest and authentically all of yourself.
Yeah. 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 This is part of the emotional intelligence layer that we're all trying to navigate
Hmm.
as adults, as children, and um, we're not really taught to or helped in experiencing these moments that are feel really uncomfortable. And part of grief, sometimes people have to face um, maybe self-blaming
Hmm.
or judgment.
Hmm.
So there's so many things that happen in those situations that if you're not ready for them, um, or know how to navigate them, it makes the process even hard. It's like it stops it from happening because you're just stuck, right?
Hmm.
Instead of like getting to the point where you may see me as like, oh, she's pretty like level. Like
Hmm.
that's because I have like cried and like
Hmm.
I purged, and all the things, and and still do.
Yeah, right.
And still do. And still do. And I'd like to remind people, like, we're all gonna face death someday. You're gonna die, and you're gonna it's either gonna be a spontaneous and you won't even know it, or it's gonna be long and arduous, and
Hmm.
hopefully it's the former.
Yeah. Hmm.
Some people don't. My grandmother just took forever. I was like, Grammy, like the
Yeah.
party's happening up above. Like you got to get going. What's happening? um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's just there's this discomfort, and it's part of the disease that we experience in this society when we remove ourselves from people who are ill and who are dying.
So true. So true. And I think just even like having this conversation openly as you are right now and speaking about the vulnerabilities of death and dying and grief, hopefully for somebody listening is giving them a bit of permission to be able to express what they're going through. Or if it's hard for them to show up for themselves, see somebody who's suffering and be able
Mm-hmm.
to maybe be more present for them, because I think a lot of people, if they see somebody in intense pain or intense grief, like we just stay away from that. Like, oh, I'm giving them space. This is what they want. They need space. But no, like being able to like show up compassionately and be with them in their darkest moments is one of the greatest gifts that you can give to somebody.
Yeah, and you can ask too.
Mm. Hmm.
You
People
can
are afraid to
ask.
ask,
I
right?
know. It's like you can just simply just ask, like, I see you're suffering. Do you need someone to sit here and be present with you? Like
Yeah.
I can be silent.
Hmm.
You can like literally just do that. And you can even ask, like, if you'd like, you can hold my hand. You don't have to
Hmm.
like touch them, but you can offer your arm to them. Like, yeah, it's wild. It's I have the reason why I believe these things happen is because the intensity of the emotions are
Hmm.
so much in our bodies that it makes us so uncomfortable. It's like almost anxiety ridden, like
Yeah. And you bring up another good point is that like when we have these big, huge emotions, they are in our bodies, they're stored in our bodies, but in our society, we really tend to focus on the mind and the brain and like thinking, the thoughts, all the logic, that we ignore the turmoil that is like everything that's building within our bodies, and to be able to find ways to tune into our bodies and help our bodies physically work through the emotion that we're experiencing, whether it's, as you said, like through intense crying and purging, or whether it's through how you move your body and work through
mhm,
different exercises. We are doing a huge disservice to ourselves and to others by just focusing on like the thought aspect of what we're going through, and not tuning into our body, and even the spiritual and astrological realm as well, because you said everything is interconnected, like everything is
mhm.
like it's been written and
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And not to say that everything is fated, however, uh yeah, like some things can be seen. It's just wild how that happens. Yeah, I think about those times in life, and um I wish that for me what I had during those times is just somebody to be very open and willing to just talk with me and not treat it as so weirdly.
Yeah.
And And I know that I eventually got to that point because I just forced it in my own space,
Hmm.
but it took a while. And the initial, I would say, like the initial year or so, and certainly weeks, like days, weeks, months within that time are really critical because your mind and will do all kinds of things, and the your body as well. Like what I've noticed is that that intensity of those moments get absorbed into your body itself, and then next thing you know, you're like dealing with some other things,
Hmm. Hmm.
some illness, some
Totally.
dis-ease in the
Yes.
body because it's been now stored and can't be released.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It doesn't just disappear. It's gonna manifest in other ways. And so it is so important to to find ways to process it both mentally and physically as well. So I wanted to make sure, Carolina, that we spend a little bit of time talking about some events that you have coming up in service of other people. I know that you
Oh.
have something really exciting happening in the near future, and I was hoping you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, for those listening in, I have a 5-day summit coming up February 18th through the 22nd in 2025.
Yeah.
And each day is focused on one core thing, which is health, wisdom, happiness,
Hmm.
wealth, health, wealth, happiness, wisdom, and integration. And so the idea is that each day you could jump in, jump out as you wish. It's free to attend. It's 25 now if you want to catch the replays. And it spans about 24 different speakers from different walks of life, different experiences, woo, non woo. And I am going to be doing 3 conversations around some core things. One of them is Pluto and Aquarius, which some people might be hearing out there in the collective if you're in that realm of listening to these things. And I'm sure even like the mainstream media has picked up on it.
Hmm.
And the what I'm covering around that is shadow work and our power, like tips for navigating this 20-year transit. This is pretty significant. Some people may say, like, this is a glimpse of what the Aquarian age is to be. And I would certainly say we're getting a taste of that.
Yeah.
And the second one will be on midlife transit. So talking about what the F is happening to you. Like
Hmm.
what's happening and how can you use that wisdom, and if you're reflecting, if you're past these midlife transits, maybe you're trying to understand what happened and what to look forward to, or if you're in it, how to navigate it. And then the very last one is the basically the transits for abundance for 2025, and those are Jupiter and Saturn. And these are technical terms, but if to us in astrology, Jupiter and Saturn are really what creates the framework for expansion, but also planning. Like you can't
Hmm.
really like build a your whatever it is, like thing that you want to build in life, business, relationship. There has to be discipline, but there also has to be aspirations.
Hmm.
And those are the 2 archetypes that work together for. And I'll be talking about 2025 and why the time that is happening right now is so important.
That sounds incredible. So, listening to these amazing opportunities that you're having coming up, is this open to truly anybody, or is this for people that already have a background with astrology? Who is this meant for?
Yeah, I would say this is for those who are basics. You're gonna know your sun, moon, and rising, possibly. Mostly your sun. Most people just know, like, I'm a Cancer sun,
Hmm.
I'm an Aquarius, and that's all you really need to know for what I'm gonna share, because you'll take away what I share with you and go back and probably like do a little bit of scribbling and understanding and rabbit holing of like how to activate what I'm sharing. But yeah,
That sounds amazing. So, basically, if you know your sign, then you are qualified to join and you have something to learn from
yeah,
this.
yeah. This is for beginners, not for experts.
Perfect. I love that. And I will absolutely include any information and links in the episode notes so that people can easily sign up for this amazing free, hello, free opportunity, 5 days of learning with experts from all over, just like Carolina here. And what an incredible opportunity. Thank you for sharing your gifts.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's my pleasure. I operate of like just give and it'll come back. I'm never worried, you know.
I
Mhm.
couldn't agree more, and it is so true. Carolina, I just want to thank you so much for
Thank
being here on the
you.
show today. It has been
Thank you,
an
thank you,
honor
thank you.
speaking with you, and I'm so excited to see all of the amazing things you're going to continue to do.
Thank you, Laura. I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me here, and I look forward to connecting with you all, and I'll see you then.